There was a fresh chain bolted across my forest trail, glinting in the sunlight like a middle finger from the HOA. I stood there, hands on my hips, staring at the silver insult blocking the path that had run behind my house for over 15 years. My name's Preston Zeller, and I've lived on this land since before the HOA even existed. The forest trail wasn't just some pretty walking path, it was part of my property. Surveyed, marked, and recorded with the county. But that didn't stop the HOA from acting like they owned everything they could see. And behind this stunt, that'd be Tamara Fielding, the HOA president with the personality of a wasp and the voice of a car alarm. She'd been on a power trip ever since she took over the board last year, trying to turn our quiet neighborhood into some hyper-manicured gated community straight out of a real estate catalog. I marched straight to the HOA office, which was literally a converted pool house with a printer shoved in the corner. Tamara was there, of course, pretending to be busy at her desk. "Tamara," I said, keeping my voice calm but tight. "Why is there a chain across my trail?" She didn't even look up from her clipboard. "That trail is a safety concern. The HOA voted to restrict access." I stepped forward. "It's on my land." Now she looked up, eyebrows raised like I'd just insulted her dog. "Well, if you had actually read the updated community guidelines, you'd know that the HOA has the right to take action in areas that affect neighborhood aesthetics or safety." "You ever hear of a property line?" I asked. "Because I've got the deed and the survey that says that trail and the woods around it are mine." Tamara gave a tight smile. "You can bring it up at the next board meeting." "You'll be taking that chain down," I said. She leaned back in her chair. "If you tamper with it, that's destruction of HOA property." I left before I said something I'd regret. But I already knew what I was going to do. That night, after making sure my outdoor cams were on and recording, I walked down to the trail with my bolt cutters. The chain was thick, but not invincible. One clean cut and it clattered to the ground. I tossed it in my shed and walked back up the trail like I owned it, because I did. 3 days later, I got a letter taped to my door. Not mailed, taped. "Notice of violation, destruction of HOA property, fine, $2,000. I laughed, out loud. Then I stopped laughing because the second page showed photos of my shed, of me walking with bolt cutters. Tamara had trespassed onto my property to take them. Oh, she just made a mistake. A big, expensive, possibly criminal one. HOA story, HOA stories, Homeowners Association stories, Sheriff's Deputy Reyes tilted his head slightly as I handed him the photos. His eyes moved slowly across each one, the ones I'd printed out from my trail cameras. Tamara, in a navy windbreaker with the HOA crest stitched on the chest, stepping over the boundary marker, walking 30 paces into my wooded lot, and kneeling to take pictures of my shed. "She wasn't invited onto your property?" he asked, flipping to the next image. "Nope," I said, arms crossed. "And the marker stakes are fluorescent orange. No way she missed them." Reyes pursed his lips, then handed the stack of photos back to me. "That's criminal trespass. She crossed a clear boundary, and if she used anything from that visit to hit you with a fine, that's a whole other can of worms. Think the DA would be interested?" He gave a slow nod. "If you're serious, file a report." "I'll write it up tonight." After he left, I pulled out the old manila folder from my filing cabinet. Inside was my property survey map, the big one with the county seal in the corner, and a copy of the easement release signed by the previous owners of the adjoining lot. The trail ran clean through my land, not even brushing up against any common areas. I hadn't needed this paperwork in years, but now it felt like a loaded weapon. Next stop was my attorney's office. I'd known Gloria Mendel since my late wife passed. She helped me sort the estate without charging me a cent. When I walked in with the violation notice and photos, she read them in silence. By the end, she was tapping the edge of her desk with a gold pen. "This is good," she said, meaning the evidence. "They've overstepped and you've got hard proof." Think they'll back down if I serve them, Gloria shook her head. Not this board, they'll double down, but that's fine. We'll file for property damage, trespass, and injunctive relief. They want to fight. Let's give them one. By Friday, the paperwork was filed with County Civil Court, and a process server handed Tamara the packet right in front of the clubhouse during a community event. I wasn't there, but my neighbor Theo gave me the play-by-play. Said she turned redder than a fire hydrant. Saturday morning, I woke up to find a second chain across the trail. This one thicker. Forged steel with a padlock the size of a softball, and zip tied to it. A laminated sign that read Restricted Access, HOA authorized only. But this time I didn't touch it. Instead, I called the sheriff's office again. Rays came out with a younger deputy and a county official in tow. They measured the chain's placement, compared it to the survey, and snapped photos from every angle. The official, a tall guy in a tan blazer, crouched next to the boundary stake and ran his hand along the soil. "This is textbook encroachment," he said. "They installed this on private property. Without a permit, that's a violation of municipal code." Rays nodded and turned to me. "Want to press charges for criminal mischief?" "I do," I said, "and I want this thing gone." They didn't remove it then and there, but they did post a county notice on it, bright red, sealed in plastic. Unauthorized structure remove within 72 hours or face penalty. On Sunday night, the chain was still there. Monday morning, it was gone, but so were 3 of my trail cameras, ripped clean off the trees, cables dangling like snapped vines. I didn't bother calling the cops this time. I walked straight into Gloria's office with the footage from my backup cam hidden higher, tucked inside the hollow of a pine tree. The footage showed 2 HOA board members, Ron and Cheryl, wearing gloves, cutting the straps off my trail cams and stuffing them into a duffel bag. Gloria watched it in stone silence. Then she picked up the phone and called the county prosecutor's office. She didn't even ask me first. By the end of the week, both of them received notices for destruction of property and theft. The prosecutor wasn't playing games. Apparently, this wasn't the first time the HOA had used dirty tactics behind closed doors, just the first time someone had them dead to rights. That weekend, I hosted a bonfire behind my house, right where the trail opened into the clearing. I invited every neighbor on my street. Some came out of curiosity, others because they were sick of the board's antics but too afraid to speak up. I stood in front of the fire pit, holding a poster board with a blown-up map of my property. "This is mine," I said, pointing to the shaded area. "Always has been. But last week, someone stole my cameras and tried to block my access again." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "The board thinks they can do whatever they want, but they can't, and I'm not the only one they've pushed too far." That's when Theo stepped forward and held up a folder. "They fined me for having a garden hose visible from the street," he said. "But my footage showed it was rolled up behind my garage. They never revoked the fine." Then Marcy from down the block spoke up. "They threatened to tow my son's car for parking in front of our own mailbox. We don't even have sidewalks." One by one, more neighbors shared their stories, fines that didn't make sense, rules enforced only on certain people, board meetings moved without notice. I passed around a sign-up sheet. "We can file a petition to recall the board. We only need 25% of the neighborhood to trigger a vote." By the end of the night, over 40 signatures filled the paper. On Monday, Gloria filed a motion to expand our lawsuit. Now we weren't just suing for trespass and property damage, we were going after civil harassment and abuse of authority. The board didn't take it well. Tamara sent a letter through her attorney threatening a counter-suit for defamation. Gloria sent back a 2-sentence reply. "We welcome your counterclaim and will request full discovery. Depositions will commence immediately." They didn't file it. Instead, they started damage control. A rushed newsletter went out claiming misunderstandings and pending clarifications regarding property boundaries. But it was too late. The court date was set. Tamara tried to delay it, claimed she had medical issues. The judge denied the motion and scheduled a preliminary hearing for 2 weeks out. When the hearing came, I sat in court with Gloria, a binder of photos, maps, and timestamps on the table in front of us. The HOA's lawyer looked like he'd been dragged there half asleep and underpaid. The judge listened to Gloria outline the timeline, the unauthorized chain installation, the violation letter citing photos taken during criminal trespass, the retaliation with the second chain, the stolen cameras, and the county's ruling that the HOA had violated municipal code by installing structures on private land. At the end of it all, the judge leaned forward. "Why," he said slowly, "did your client think it was appropriate to install barriers on land that does not belong to the association?" The HOA's lawyer fumbled through a stack of papers. "There was confusion about the boundaries. My client acted in good faith." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Good faith does not include trespassing, theft, or fabricating violations." Injunction granted. Defendant is ordered to cease all access or interference with plaintiff's property. Outside the courtroom, Tamara didn't say a word. She just stormed off, heels clicking like gunshots on the marble floor, but the fallout didn't stop there. That night, I got a call from someone I didn't expect, Dale, one of the HOA's longtime board members. He'd rarely spoken during meetings, always voted with the majority. But now, "I'm resigning," he said. "I didn't sign up for this kind of mess. I should have said something earlier." 2 more board members stepped down within the week. The petition to recall the board passed with overwhelming support, and a special election was scheduled for the following month, and me. I got my trail back, no chains, no signs. Just pine needles, birdsong, and the occasional deer track. I installed new cameras this time up high with solar panels and encrypted storage, because if they ever tried anything again, I'd be ready. 2 weeks before the special election, a white SUV rolled up my driveway just as I was hauling mulch to the garden beds. I didn't recognize the car, but the woman who stepped out wore business slacks and carried a slim leather portfolio. She introduced herself as Detective Elena Carr from the county's Public Integrity Unit. "Mind if I ask you a few questions about the HOA board?" she said, walking with deliberate steps, her eyes scanning the property. I led her to the porch, offered her a chair and a bottle of water. She didn't waste time. "We've been looking into a number of complaints involving your HOA financial discrepancies, unauthorized surveillance, and document tampering. Your case brought some of that into the light. I'd like to know if you've seen anything else unusual, especially during or after your lawsuit." I leaned back and thought for a moment. There's been a lot of turnover. 3 board members resigned. But what caught my attention was the sudden removal of records from the association's website. Used to be you could download meeting minutes and financial reports. That all vanished the week after our hearing. She took out a small notepad. "Do you have any screenshots or backups?" I nodded. "I've got PDFs on a flash drive." I saved the last 6 months' worth before everything disappeared. "Excellent," she said, standing. "I'll need that, and if you hear anything else, anything at all, call me directly." That night, I pulled out the flash drive and went through the files. I hadn't read them in detail before, assuming most of it was routine HOA tedium. But now that I had a reason to dig, I spotted something odd in the March budget summary. A $5,000 payment labeled Landscape Emergency North Lot. There was no North Lot. That part of the neighborhood was still undeveloped brushland. I printed the page and called Elena the next morning. She was at my place within the hour. "That entry doesn't match any permits or invoices we've seen," she said, scanning the line item. "Can I take this?" I gave her the page and the full flash drive. "If they buried anything in those files, I hope it's useful." It was. The following Thursday, the sheriff's office raided the HOA office during business hours. 2 white vans, 4 deputies, and 1 county IT technician marched into the clubhouse like they were entering a crime scene. Which, as it turned out, they were. Tamara wasn't there, but Cheryl, the board's secretary until she resigned, was. They escorted her out in handcuffs. By sunset, news vans were parked outside the neighborhood entrance. A local reporter stood under the street sign, microphone in hand, saying words I never expected to hear on the evening news. Charges include embezzlement, wire fraud, and criminal conspiracy related to falsified HOA expenditures and unauthorized surveillance of residents. Turns out, the fake landscape emergency was a cover for private security contractors hired by the board to install hidden trail cams and listening devices near what they called problem properties. Mine was one of them. So was Theo's. So was the home of a retired schoolteacher named Mrs. Hightower, who had once publicly questioned a board vote to increase HOA dues. I didn't sleep much that night. Not out of fear those days were over, but because I kept thinking about how close we'd all come to letting it slide. If I hadn't cut down that first chain, if Gloria hadn't pushed for full discovery, if Elena hadn't picked up the thread, it would have all stayed buried. The next day, Tamara turned herself in. She was booked on 8 felony counts, including unlawful surveillance and misappropriation of HOA funds. The county prosecutor held a press conference on the courthouse steps. "This is a clear example of power being abused under the veil of community management," he said. "No homeowners association is above the law." The special election went ahead as scheduled. I didn't run, but I helped organize a candidate forum at the local library. We invited every homeowner, handed out flyers, and set up folding chairs in neat rows. 7 residents stepped up to run, none of them former board members, no one with vague titles or hidden agendas. Just people who lived here and wanted things done right. Theo ran and won. So did a young woman named Anjali, a nurse who had lived here for 5 years and never once received a violation until she started petitioning for sidewalk repairs. Her first act on the board was to draft a motion requiring all budgets and meeting minutes to be publicly posted and archived. It passed unanimously. Meanwhile, the court approved a restitution fund for residents who could prove they were wrongfully fined or surveilled. The HOA's insurance carrier wasn't thrilled, but they paid out over $80,000 in claims after the forensic audit revealed fabricated violations and duplicate contractor invoices. As for my trail, it became something more than just a strip of dirt through the woods. I installed a wooden gate at the entrance not to keep people out, but to mark it as something worth protecting. Theo helped me build a small bench halfway down, and Anjali donated a weatherproof box for sharing books. We called it the Common Path. One afternoon, I found a laminated sign posted at the gate. It read, "This trail was once chained shut by those who thought they owned more than they did. It reopened because one neighbor stood up and others followed." Let it remind us that silence protects no one, but truth puts down roots. No one ever claimed credit for writing it. I left it there. Because sometimes the best way to win isn't just to push back, it's to build something better in the space they tried to take. And this time, we weren't going to let anyone steal it again. The first sign that things weren't truly over came during a community cleanup day, about 3 weeks after the new board took office. I was trimming back overgrowth at the edge of the walking trail when Theo flagged me down, holding a thick envelope with no return address. "It was taped to the clubhouse door this morning," he said, "addressed to the board." I figured you'd want to see it. Inside were 4 printed pages and a USB drive. The papers were photocopies of invoices, all billed to the HOA over the past 6 months, but they weren't from any landscaping or maintenance company. They were from a firm based 2 counties over a private data analysis service. The kind typically retained by legal teams or, more rarely, corporate intelligence groups. I plugged the USB into my laptop back at the house. Gloria was on speakerphone while I clicked through the folders. Dozens of PDFs, spreadsheets, and memos filled the screen, each one labeled with property addresses. Not just mine. Dozens of homes tagged with keywords like disruptive, non-compliant, and observe for escalation. None of these expenses ever showed up in the HOA budget, I said, scrolling. They were hidden. Gloria's voice came through steady. They likely used off-the-books payments, probably funneled through personal accounts or shell contractors. This wasn't just surveillance. This was targeted profiling. I opened one file marked Zeller Secondary Risk Assessment. It detailed movements on my property, the frequency of backyard gatherings, and even mentioned the small generator I'd installed for storm outages. The language was clinical, but the intent was unmistakable. They had stalked me like I was a threat. This isn't just a civil matter, Gloria said. This is criminal conspiracy and unlawful data collection. Forward everything to Detective Carr. I'll notify the DA's office. By that evening, Elena and 2 federal agents were sitting in my living room, reviewing the documents. One of them, a quiet man from the state's cybercrime unit, linked the USP's metadata to a laptop registered under Cheryl's name. Looks like this wasn't just HOA oversight, he said. These files were created using software licensed to a private security firm that contracts with real estate developers. We've had our eye on them for a while. Elena leaned forward. You mentioned a developer approached you a few years ago about buying your back lot. Was that offer still open when this all started? I nodded slowly. They came back last spring. Offered double the market rate if I'd sell the trail access. I turned them down. Elena sat back. This wasn't about aesthetics or safety. They were trying to create pressure, make you miserable until you sold. The case widened quickly. The new board turned over what little documentation had survived. Theo found a locked drawer in the clubhouse office containing handwritten notes from Tamara lists of targeted residents, mentions of soft influence tactics, and references to Phase 2. That phrase surfaced again in the state investigation. Phase 2 was shorthand used by the security firm to describe escalation tactics. Filing false violations, initiating code complaints, and in some cases, leveraging local contacts to delay permit approvals or inspections for homeowners who resisted property sales. The firm had done this before in other counties, always under the radar. But this time, they had been caught using HOA authority as a weapon. 2 weeks after the new evidence surfaced, a grand jury indicted Tamara, Cheryl, and 2 former board advisors. Charges included conspiracy to commit fraud, illegal surveillance, and attempted coercion through misuse of authority. The security firm's regional director was also named, along with a development company executive tied to the purchase offers. The trial was scheduled for late summer. Gloria and I weren't just witnesses, we were the central thread. She helped me compile a full timeline of events, from the first chain across the trail to the last forged invoice. The prosecutors were meticulous, cross-referencing every file on the USB with bank records and email logs obtained through warrants. During the trial, the courtroom was packed. Residents filled the benches, some standing in the back. The prosecutors laid out the scheme in clean, brutal detail. The developer had wanted to expand into the forested area behind our homes, but needed control over the trail and adjacent lots. When key owners refused to sell, the board under Tamara's leadership worked with the firm to apply pressure. Surveillance, fines, and even false complaints to city inspectors followed. The jury deliberated less than 2 hours. All 4 defendants were convicted. The judge didn't hold back. Tamara received a 5-year sentence. Cheryl got 3. The firm's director and the developer's executive were both sentenced to state prison on conspiracy and fraud charges. But the most important part came after the sentencing. The judge issued a permanent injunction. No HOA in our county could enter into any surveillance or third-party contract without a full vote of the membership and public record of all expenditures. A new oversight committee was formed at the county level to monitor HOA activities across multiple neighborhoods. A week after the verdict, the trail was busier than it had ever been. There was no ceremony, no ribbon cutting. Just families walking, couples holding hands, and teenagers tossing frisbees in the clearing. Someone had carved a message into the bench Theo and I built. Just 3 words, burned carefully into the wood, kept it ours. Theo joined me near the edge, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to me without saying anything for a moment, just listening to the wind move through the trees. "They tried to tear this place apart," he said finally. "All for a few extra homes and a bigger parking lot. They underestimated what people will do when they're pushed too far," I said. "They thought nobody would notice or care." He took a sip. "They were wrong." Months passed. Grass grew back over the old marker posts, and the HOA, now under full community control, rewrote its charter entirely. No more closed meetings, no more hidden deals. Every decision posted publicly, every vote recorded, the trail stayed open. We added a small community board at the entrance, where kids posted drawings and seniors left gardening tips. A local artist painted a mural on the back of the bench, showing the trail winding through the trees with shadows falling away behind it. And every time I walked it, I remembered that first chain. The one they thought would keep me out. Instead, it unlocked everything.